Welcome to the Grizzly Cave. This video I'm going to talk about 4 different types of fencing that we'd see in North America and Canada during the 17th, 18th and 19th century up until the 1870s when barbed wire became very prevalent. So there's 4 types that I'm going to be talking about: split rail, post and rail, stone walls, and hybrid fencing. Hybrid I'm going to get to last because that's sort of a term that I'm sort of using, but it's not official. So the first, or maybe the second, I can't remember what order I did them in, post and rail fencing. So post and rail is you dig a hole, you put a post in that hole, you put holes in the post, and you slide rails through them. This is sort of, if you've ever been to a horse stud, you see these painted white around horse studs. These are these sort of, if you think of a barbed wire fence, replace the barbed wire with wood, that's post and rail fencing. This was slightly more complicated to do because you had to actually make holes in the wood, but it was quite sturdy. You dug into the ground, you put the thing in there, and it generally stayed where it is. A point about fences: remember that animals will not actively sort of test fences. Even today, a modern horse or a modern cow can get through a barbed wire fence. Believe me, my family used to live on a farm. My grandparents had a farm when I was a child. A horse or a cow can get through a barbed wire fence. It's not going to keep them in. You know, if they really want to get out, they're going to get out. And so these fences are strong enough to keep animals in. They look quite good actually, and yeah. So that's the first type of fence that can be built in the American frontier. And you might say, well, why cut holes in the wood? Why not just simply nail the exterior pieces to the front? And that was done. But one of the problems facing the American frontier, and this is any real frontier, but North America is what's most common, is that you do not have access to nails. Nails are quite hard to get out there. You can get them. They'd be quite expensive. Nails are actually quite heavy if you bring enough of them to fence large areas. So you could bring a heap of nails, or you could bring food that your family is going to need to survive. So premium space, weight, cost. The nails were not very common in the frontier outside of and when they were used for things like your home. They were almost luxury type building materials. But anyway, the second type is the split rail fence, or the worm fence, or the snake rail fence. This is the fence that looks like a big crisscross pattern, a zigzag fence. Have you seen any American Civil War photographs, or yes, there are photographs of the American Civil War. I believe Antietam was the first time photographs were taken. They were exhibited in New York. Anyway, another video. But if you've seen photographs, movies, paintings of the American Civil War, you've probably seen these type of fences. They were very useful in the American Civil War because the soldiers could simply walk over to the fence and take it apart relatively quickly, and use it for firewood. But okay, so how was this fence built? Well, you laid a piece of timber down. You then laid a second piece of timber, which crossed it at the end, sort of maybe a foot in, and they would form a sort of X shape. And you would just repeat this all the way along, and then you would come back and add a second layer, and a third layer, and a fourth layer, and a fifth layer, until you get to the height you wanted. Obviously, a sheep pen doesn't have to be as high as a horse paddock or a cow paddock. And this is how you made this fence. You simply stacked wood on top of each other in a crisscross zigzag type pattern. If you want to estimate the distance of a field, between the two crossing points of the wood is about 5 meters or 16.5 feet. That's the sort of general rule of thumb. So why would you build split rail fencing instead of this nice looking post and rail fencing? Well, as I said before, post and rail fencing, you have to actually put holes in the timber. So it takes a little bit more time, a little bit more skill. Maybe you don't have the tools to do that. Maybe you don't want to spend that time doing that when you could spend that time build the fence. Actually physically laying down a fence. Maybe you just have a preference for split rail. But anyway, one of the reasons you might do it is you can't dig holes in the ground. So if you wanted to put sheep or goats in a paddock, in an area, and you wanted to enclose that area, but the ground was too hard to dig in. And by too hard to dig in, I mean you physically can't dig all the way to it is difficult to dig in to the point where it's not worth doing. So you're breaking shovels, or you're just constantly hitting rock after rock after rock after rock, and you just give up and you're like, okay, I'm not going to do this 100 times to build this paddock. Let's go cut some trees down. and just stack them. And so what you could do is you could stack it around if the ground was too hard. Another reason you might do it is undulating ground, so terrain that goes up and down and sort of all over the place. It's not even, because this is North America. The terrain is not really even in these frontier areas. Of course, now we're talking about a larger sort of a crop almost type paddock. And the split rail fencing actually works perfectly well on uneven terrain, especially if you secure it with vertical struts at the cross points. You don't have to. You can also use sort of X-shaped reinforcements. You see those quite often as well. So yes, it's the hard ground and terrain are normally the reasons you would choose this over split rail fencing, but there's also time and that sort of stuff. The third type is it's just rock walls. I call them fences because it made a better video than fences and walls. Every single time I say fence and walls. Yeah. So rock walls. Why would you lug rocks all the way from New York or Pennsylvania to build a fence out in the middle of the Ohio? Well, you wouldn't. You would get to your farm in Ohio, and you would plow the field. You would say, I want to plant, I don't know what they grow in Ohio. Potatoes. We'll grow potatoes there. And so you start plowing the potato field, and dunk, rock, dunk, rock, dunk, rock. You're plowing the field, and you're just hitting rock after rock after rock. And you go, you know what? I'm a potato fanatic. I need potatoes in this field, so I shall continue planting, and I'll continue plowing this field. And dunk, 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 rock, rock, rock. And you take all these rocks and you sort of put them to one side because you don't want to just throw them everywhere because you just have to pick them up again. And you look at yourself and you go, you know what, there's quite a lot of rocks there. I think I can make a wall out of these. And you might say, well, next to this field, I'm going to have an adjoining field of the same size and I'm going to put goats in there. And goats are notorious for just eating things. So if I build a stone wall between the goat paddock and the field with my potatoes, I think that will be more secure. And so you take all the rocks that you just dug up out of the ground and you build a stone wall out of them. But you're not really going to have enough stones to build full walls around the entire paddock. So what you might do is you might just put a little bit of stone everywhere. You might stack the stones, say a foot high or half a foot high around your entire little fenced off area. And you go, okay, I don't really want to go and deliberately dig up land just to get more stones because this plow has taken quite a beating. So what I'll do instead is I'll do the fourth type of fencing, which is a stone base with a split rail on top of it. And this is the type of fence. If you've seen the movie Gettysburg, when General Buford is defending Gettysburg with his dismounted cavalry, they are hiding behind a sort of quote-unquote hybrid fence. So you'll have an X-shaped reinforcement with one, maybe two, depending on how thorough you want to be with it, horizontal bars running across the top. And this way you can have a stone wall with extra height. And these are quite common. I was originally skeptical when I saw these. I'm like, oh, that's not really quite a good fence. But they were common, they seem to work, and they seem to keep out anything non-dedicated. I mean, something you have to remember with fences is they're not prison walls. Okay, they're not going to keep things out that want to get in. If something wants to get in, they are going to get in. A modern horse can run through a barbed wire fence. You know, if something needs to get into that field, they're getting into that field. Most of these fences are more like a deterrent type mechanism, and they worked quite well because they continued to be used right up until 1870s when barbed wire was invented. And of course, barbed wire made it so much cheaper and so much easier to build large fences. This is when barbed wire came around. That was sort of the invention of the huge, massive, open ranches. This is when people could really, really have huge spaces for relatively cheap and relatively labor not intensive. So it was relatively easy to knock these fences up. And I believe at one figure I've seen is at 2 cents a pound of barbed wire. It's much, much cheaper than hiring men to fell trees and then strip the timber and that sort of thing, if you want to build a very, very large fenced area. Anyway, so I don't know a lot about fencing because I don't know a lot about fencing, but even if I did, it wouldn't be because I cared about fencing. I am a wargamer. And part of my wargaming is North America. I love, obviously I have sharp practice here behind me, and so I've got French Indian War, American Civil War, American Revolution, and the all sorts of conflicts in there. And part of these conflicts are fences, and you need a lot of fences. Have you ever seen an American Civil War table? For anything from even skirmish all the way up to divisional gaming, it is covered in meters and meters of fences. So that was the video on fencing. I hope you found it interesting. I know it's not the most enrapturing subject, but if you're looking to do some fences for your wargame, or if you're just looking to learn a little bit about the American frontier, and maybe you saw one of these fences and you thought, oh, it's quite strange, I hope this has helped you out in some way. So thanks for watching the video. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Come back soon. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day.